What is up, guys, and welcome back. It is really windy out and extremely cold, and I do not have the house ready at all yet, so that is why I'm shooting this in the car. As you guys can tell from the title, this video is probably going to get a ton of heat because every time I make a video like this, a bunch of people get upset, and you know what? I really don't care. But also, a lot of people really like these type of videos, so it's something I've been thinking about over the last few months, and I figured I would just discuss it a little bit. And that is the fact that, in my opinion, and you know, quite a few other opinions, the kayak fishing industry is dying. It is dead. Now, when I say the kayak fishing industry is dead, I don't mean it's completely dead, but we are in a huge freaking slump right now, and it is pretty obvious to see to anyone who actually has some inside knowledge on the community and the industry. I have been kayak fishing for 10 plus years now, so I've been doing this for a long time. I started actively getting involved in the actual industry part of it probably around 2014 probably is when I first started kind of getting involved, and I've seen things change a lot. Lately I've kind of been doing my own thing just because it's just more fun. I'd rather work for me than anyone else, you know. But in the last 5 years, really in the last, I'd say 4 years, things have changed a lot. I mean, things have changed rapidly in the last 10, but over the last 4 years I've seen everything kind of plateau. It seemed like for a couple years there, probably back around like 2013, 2014, things were just rocketing. Like the industry and the community was exploding, and then sometime around 2016, 2017, everything just plateaued, and it's kind of been doing that ever since, maybe even going a little downhill. It's just a lot of things I've observed to make me believe that. There are plenty of reasons why I think this is the case. One of the main reasons is that back in the day, there was only like 4 or 5 big respectable kayak brands. So to simplify this, if you look at like a pie, back then, you know, there's this big pie, and about 4 or 5 companies got a slice out of that pie, a big chunk of that pie, you know what I mean? Look at the pie as profit and, like, you know, the number of consumers. Well, now there are like 40 or 50 big brands, and they're all getting slices of that pie, but it's the same pie. This pie is the same size. It hasn't changed. So now everybody's got this little sliver, and as a result, there's not as much money, not as much profit to go around, and I think a lot of these companies are actually beginning to struggle. Actually, I know a lot of these companies are struggling. A lot of the bigger companies that have been doing good for so long are starting to struggle as well. Now, a lot of this is just my opinion, so don't beat me up over anything that I'm wrong about, because I'll just straight up admit that a lot of this stuff I'm kind of just speculating and forming opinions on, but I also do have some inside knowledge to back up, you know, all the things that I'm saying. I mean, it's really just a flooded market at this point. There's too many brands in competition. Like all these brands, all these bigger brands now, like Hobie, Jackson, Wilderness Systems, Native, NuCanoe. We even throw Feel Free in there. Vibe has gotten bigger. I mean, all these companies now make really good boats, and a lot of these smaller companies too, like some of these newer companies like Lightning Kayaks and that Johnny Bass 100 that just came out that I got. I believe that is a sister company of Feel Free, but it's not as big yet as Feel Free. There's all these little generic brands popping up too, like just tons of these brands, and all the products are similar now. Like even some of these cheap brands, like, you know, some of these smaller no-name brands, and maybe there's multiple brands with the exact same kayak pretty much. Even those kayaks are pretty good solid kayaks now, you know, better than what I had 10, 8, even 6 years ago. And it's just such a flooded market at this point. There's just so many freaking brands out there. I mean, if you just start looking, you'll find all these brands you've never even heard of, and the kayaks are legit. They got pedal drives and everything at this point, like Brooklyn Kayaks. Like, what is that? But if you look at the actual kayaks themselves, they're decent kayaks. Things started getting too expensive too there for a while. Like, I mean, there's still some really expensive boats out there, but it seemed like everybody wanted bigger and better, and people were spending close to $3,000 on a kayak. And I think now we're seeing the prices drop a lot, and I think a lot of the better sellers now are the cheaper boats under $1,000, just because they need more sales. They're not getting enough sales with those more expensive boats. There's just so many more options now, like different kind of watercrafts people are fishing on, and social media is to blame for a lot of this because it's just so easy to find a new way to fish now. But people are using float tubes like crazy, inflatable kayaks, which I guess is still a kayak, but it's different John boat, all these different cheap, affordable John boats now. There's plastic hull boats. I actually have one. Just all these different kind of little boats. And a lot of the kayaks nowadays aren't even kayaks anymore. It's just like a personal vessel. But my point is, there are just so many different options now to fish from small personal crafts than there were before, which again is causing an extremely flooded market. A lot of the big consumers, you know, when kayak fishing first started getting big, or have moved on to power boats at this point. There's only so much you can do from a kayak. Now, I love kayak fishing. Kayak fishing is still and will probably always be my favorite way to fish, but it's silly to only fish from a kayak when if you're fishing huge water and you gotta cover a lot of distance, you don't want to be in a kayak. That's just silly. You know, back in the day, that's all I ever wanted to do was just fish from a kayak, no matter what, no matter how big of a pain in the ass it was to paddle out 10 miles or whatever. Now, in a situation like that, I'm taking a boat. Like, it just makes way more sense. You're still gonna catch fish. I mean, there's a place for everything. Kayaks, in my opinion, are way better for rivers, like skinny water rivers, tight spaces, like smaller bodies of water, stuff like that. I think another thing that has happened too is there's been a lot of drama in the kayak world over the last couple years, and it has gotten increasingly worse, and certain individuals have made companies look terrible and has made the entire sport look terrible, and I think as a result that has hurt the industry as a whole. You know, people were just handing out pro staff positions left and right to people who weren't qualified and were honestly just terrible, selfish, rude human beings that just made the whole industry look bad and really gave the kayak community and the kayak industry just a bad look. People just got tired of it, moved on to other ways to fish. Another thing I've noticed is, like, when I started back in, I don't know when it was, 2010, 2011, or might have been 2009, I don't even remember now, I'd have to check, 2010-ish, everyone was just so passionate about it. And then that, you know, that carried all the way into like 2015 and stuff. Like, just that age group of the guys from 2010 to 2015, like that let's call it a class, that class of kayak fishermen were just so freaking passionate. And the new guys coming in, like, there aren't as many. It seems like that same age group, the 20 to 25 age anglers, like, they just don't, they're not as interested in kayak fishing, it seems like, in my personal experience. A lot of them would rather fish from a bass boat, or what's crazy too, I think a huge part of this is from YouTube and social media. Bank fishing has gotten huge again. I remember I didn't want to fish from the bank at all, but now you see a ton of guys doing that, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, bank fishing's fun too. I do it all the time too. I think social media has really shown that, like, you really don't need a boat to catch really big fish. I mean, there's guys catching huge sharks from the piers and stuff. When I went down and fished for redfish from the pier, like, just giant fish, like, from a pier. You don't even need a boat. So I think that, and especially, like, if you live down like Florida or something, like all the ponds and stuff down there, like, you really don't need a kayak. And social media has really shined a light on that. So I think a lot of people who would have bought kayaks just figured it wasn't worth it because they got all this great water they can fish from the shore. I also think, you know, back probably around 2014, 2015, we can even go back as far as 2013, when everything was exploding, everybody wanted to be a professional kayak fisherman. Everybody did. And it's like not even a real career choice. Like, there are a few people who have done it, a very few amount. There's people who are doing pretty good for themselves, and there's people who are claiming to have done it, but they're struggling and they're working, you know, other jobs and stuff. Like, I used to be one of those guys. I didn't fully claim to be a professional, but I was making decent money, but it still just wasn't enough, and it started to just become too much work. And it's funny because now that I'm doing my own thing, I'm actually making more money. But yeah, I think a lot of those guys really just had to grow up and get real jobs, and as a result had to fish less, and you know, they just don't fish as much anymore. One of the biggest issues, I think, is, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but all the freaking pro staff positions. Like, everybody got on a pro staff. It was incredible. Anybody who wanted to be on a pro staff could find a company to put them on a pro staff. They got all these deals. Some people, if you were lucky enough, you got free kayaks and stuff like that. Others, you know, just got an incredible discount. But now, I mean, you know, a lot of these boats are well made. So a lot of these guys are either still on pro staff, still getting these deals, or they have boats from just a couple of years ago and are still in great shape, and there's no need for them to buy any more boats. If you got 4 perfectly good kayaks, why would you go buy a new one? And not to mention that, all these pro staff guys selling these boats on like Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace. I mean, you can find a $2,000 boat, $3,000 boat used from like a pro staff or something on Facebook Marketplace for like $1,000. You get these huge discounts that you're not going to be able to get from a company. So again, this just all goes back to this huge saturated market, and there's only so many people. Like, even as big as kayak fishing has gotten, there's only it's still a relatively small industry. There aren't a lot of consumers out there, and now that the market is just flooded and completely saturated with all these boats and all these different companies and all these ex-pro staffers or pro staffers selling their old boats and stuff, there's no need to go buy, you know, a $3,000 boat. It's just not. A lot of people are starting to justify too, like, you know, if they really want one of these expensive pedal drive boats or something like that, where it's a $3,000 boat, Like, hell, you might as well just get a bass boat. You might as well get like a cheap older bass boat, like Tracker, or a nice decked out John boat or something at that point, and trailer it around. A lot of these bigger kayaks, you got trailer anyway. But yeah, I mean, sales are way down for most of these companies. That's why you've seen a lot of companies rebranding. That's why you've seen a lot less money being spent as far as like new products dropping, and like even like from the marketing standpoint, you're not seeing as many of those lifestyle videos and stuff from the companies. You're not seeing like the stuff that I used to do. You're not seeing a lot of that stuff anymore. And that is because sales are down. The kayak fishing community is in a huge slump. I don't know what's going to happen from here. I don't know if it's going to get better. This might be the new normal. I knew this was eventually going to happen. You know, eventually everything's got to kind of taper off and plateau. And that's what we're seeing now over the last probably year and a half, I'd say. Probably about a year and a half. And lately, it seems to have gotten pretty bad. Like I was saying, I do have some inside knowledge on this stuff, but a lot of that was just my speculation and opinions. Just something I've kind of been wanting to talk about a little bit. I really want to start like a podcast style setup once I get my house done, to where I'll be able to have more kind of discussions, I guess, and bring people on the show actually, and talk more. There's a deer walking right across the road right now. What are you doing, buddy? He's limping too. Look at this. He's limping for some reason. His front right leg is limping. Huh. Well, that was interesting. But yeah, like I was saying, I want to get like a podcast thing kind of set up to where I can have these discussions more and like in just a better atmosphere and stuff, and you know, bring people on. They can voice their opinions and stuff like that. That's pretty much all I have for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, please smash the subscribe button, hit the like button, and I'll see you next time.